scared of it, Blair. It's not going to hurt
All
you.
right. I think we're good. Hey, everybody. My name's Blair. I'm an alcoholic. And my sobriety date is February 6, 2007. And my home group is the Monday New Tampa men's meeting. We meet over in New Tampa off of Risby Downs every Monday at 7 o'clock. It's all in the name, so I guess I didn't really have to explain that. And I have a sponsor, and I'm really happy to be here. This group has a special place in my sobriety. Been coming here for a while. I remember early sobriety coming out here. Me and my cousin would come out here, and we've known a few of these guys for a while. And it's just good to see some old faces and be back here. I went over an inventory yesterday with a friend, and I discovered that I didn't want to do this. I mean, it popped up on the inventory, and I'm just being honest about that. I did not want to be here. This is one of my least favorite things to do in AA, but he reminded me what my purpose is here. My purpose is to carry the message of Alcoholics Anonymous and to hopefully help at least one person in this group tonight. I prayed with Michael in the back room. I prayed with Chris in the bathroom. And I prayed with a bunch of these guys in that back room. So, we asked God to speak through me. And I trust that He'll do that tonight. So, I'll just start from the beginning. I remember, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on my childhood, but I will touch on a few different things. I remember being a kid. I remember being in a room, like I could be in a room full of people and just feel like I was by myself. I just felt separate from. I didn't really feel like a part of. I felt like with kids my age, I felt like if you really got to know me, you probably wouldn't like me. And selfish and self-centered to the core as a kid, for sure. I remember being in the lunchroom at school and feeling like everybody was judging me. Just feeling like everybody was watching me eat my peanut butter and jelly sandwich. So not only was I always thinking about myself, I thought all you guys were always thinking about me too. That's the extreme that I would take it to, being self-centered. And that created a lot of fear, a lot of anxiety. I was a pretty anxious kid, pretty introverted. But I had a good childhood. On the outside, if you're on the outside looking in, you'd be like, oh, he's got a good childhood. We played Little League baseball. We're always outside in the woods, shooting BB guns, playing basketball. So having friends over after school. So I had a good childhood. And I do want to mention my parents split up when I was young. And I was born in New Jersey. So when I was 6, me and my mom's side of the family moved down here, and then my dad stayed in New Jersey. So there was a long-distance relationship there with my dad. And I was very resentful at my dad growing up. I heard things about him from my mom's side of the family that I probably shouldn't have heard, 6, 7, 8 years old, bad things about him. And that created a resentment, and I wouldn't know that that's what it was at the time, but looking back, I was resentful at my dad for cheating on my mom. And so that's probably my first resentment. That's probably my oldest resentment. So anyway, moving along, I never had any plans, as a kid growing up, I never had any plans to drink or use drugs. I have an aunt and an uncle who got sober in AA in the late 80s, and I would hear horror stories about them. My aunt's 3 DUIs, my uncle almost committing suicide because of his drug addiction. And so it was just common sense growing up in my family that you don't drink and don't use drugs. But I got into 10th grade in high school, and it started to seem like everybody was getting drunk on the weekends, and I was missing out on fun. It seemed like everybody was doing it. I remember these kids talking about a keg party they were at over the weekend. They're talking about it in class, and they're talking about how the cops got called, and how they had to jump the neighbor's fence and run through the neighbor's yards to get away. And I was like, man, that sounds like fun. I was like, that sounds like my kind of fun. I'm missing out on something. And that's when it hit me. I was like, man, I just want to try getting drunk. I want to see what that's like. So I did. I got off of school one day. I had one of those little scooter bikes, like moped scooter bikes. I jumped on it. I rode it over to my cousin's house, and we started raiding his dad's liquor cabinet. We got into my uncle's liquor cabinet, and we took like maybe 10 different bottles and poured a little bit out of each bottle into a cup until we filled it up. Just a little bit out of each one, that way he wouldn't notice. And better to do that than take one out of a whole bottle and fill it up with water. I felt like that would have made him even more mad. So I'd be very mad about that, if somebody did that to my liquor bottle. So we got this cup filled with like 10 different liquors. I remember stirring it up with my finger, and I remember sipping it, and I hated the taste. I mean, it burnt all the way down, aside from it being like the worst cocktail ever. Right? I mean, just aside from that part, it burnt all the way down. I felt like I was gonna like gag and throw up every time I took a sip. And I remember saying to my cousin, man, why do people drink this stuff? This stuff is disgusting. Why do people? I didn't get it. And so we grabbed some. Well, first he said to me, just keep drinking, you'll understand. And then we grabbed some Hawaiian Punch, and I started chasing it with Hawaiian Punch. I would sip the drink, and then I would chug the Hawaiian Punch. And man, 10 or 15 minutes later, I understood why people drank that stuff. It was not a mystery anymore. And it wasn't for the taste. It was, man, the effect that it gave me. That effect was so powerful. I remember this first drunk like it was yesterday. And this was 20-something years ago. And I remember it like it was yesterday because it totally changed my life. And for the first time in my life, like all that anxiety that I had walking around as a kid from that self-centeredness, just from thinking about myself too much and thinking everyone else was thinking about me and feel like I'm being judged everywhere I go, all that was gone. And any feeling I had of insecurity, any feeling I had of thinking I was less than, all that was gone. I didn't care. And I didn't care what you thought about me. I really had no care in the world about what you thought about me. And I could tell you what I thought about you. And that was foreign to me. It was very hard for me to express my feelings sober. It was very hard for me to just like be vulnerable. And now I'm doing it like it's second nature, I'm doing it without even thinking about it. So I loved it. I went from a pretty introverted kid to a total extrovert. And I remember jumping on the back of that moped with my cousin, and I'm telling him, I'm like, hey, bring me to Lindsay's house. Bring me to Michelle's house. These girls from school. And he would drop me off at their house, and I'd go up to the door and knock on the door. And I remember the dad came to the door, and I'm just like schmoozing him to get him to bring his daughter to the front door. I don't know what I said, but I thought I was smooth. And these are girls that like I couldn't talk to in school. I was like afraid to make eye contact with them in school. And now I'm doing this. I loved it. And I remember thinking, man, if I could feel like this all the time, my life would be great. I loved it. That first time getting drunk, I was like, this is it, man. This fixes me. And every opportunity, so I didn't become a daily drinker right away because at 15 years old, I couldn't get that much alcohol, but I started stealing it from my grandfather's liquor cabinet. I would steal it from a friend's parents' liquor cabinet, and I would stash it up, and I would make sure I had enough to get drunk before I started, because That's how I drank from the beginning. I drank to get drunk. From the beginning all the way to the end, that's how I drank. I never sat down and I was like, let me have a couple, let me have one, let me just have a few drinks. It was to get drunk. So, and I started drinking by myself real early on, too. I remember I'd have liquor stashed at the house, and I couldn't wait to get off of school and get to it. It'd be like a Tuesday afternoon. I'm drinking by myself after school. And I remember one of my friends pointed that out. He was like, Blair, he's like, wait, why are you drinking by yourself on a Tuesday afternoon? And I'm like, why are you not drinking by yourself on a Tuesday afternoon? Like, it makes perfect sense. This stuff is awesome. Do you not know how awesome it is? So he was like, it's a little alcoholic of you. I was like, okay, whatever. Like, I kind of wore that as a badge of honor. I didn't really know what that meant, you know? So just some of the consequences of my drinking, they piled on pretty quick because of the way that I drank. The way I was drinking right from the beginning. I was blacking out. And like I said, if I did by chance run out of alcohol, I was on a mission to find more. And I do want to point that out too. The first time I got drunk after school, I remember that happening. I remember we were out and about on the moped, and the thought crossed my mind, we got to get more. Because I knew it was going to wear off eventually. And I remember telling my cousin, we got to get more. But his dad had come back from work and couldn't get more. So I remember that. And so one of the first big consequences of my drinking, I was 16. I got my first car. I brought it out. My stepdad taught me how to drive a stick. Like all weekend, he taught me how to drive a stick. And then I took it out the following weekend. And we went to a party, and it was a keg party. And I remember saying, I'm only going to have 3 or 4. I'm only going to have 3 or 4 drinks at this party, because this was the first time I had a reason to stop. Like, I was driving, and I had a car full of people. So I remember saying, I'm just going to get a good little buzz going, go to the party, and that's going to be it. And we get to the party, I go straight to the alcohol, I start drinking, and by the time I got that 3rd or 4th in my system, that idea of stopping at 3 or 4 was out the window. And I remember thinking, my house is right up the road, I'll make it. Somebody will drop me off. I'll make it there. And I kept drinking. Long story short, I blacked out behind the wheel that night. I totaled my car. I crashed it into a tree in somebody's front yard. I had plenty of chances to get home safely. People drove me home. And then I got back in my car in a blackout and totaled my car. So I woke up the next day and I'm like, I wasn't really sure what happened, but I look out the front window, I see my red Acura Integra crushed up like a Coke can, and I'm like, oh man, that did happen. Oh. And I go downstairs, my mom's like crying, my stepdad's flipping out, yelling, and I didn't really have I know I made up a bunch of excuses, but I didn't really have a good one, because like I told you guys, I had every intention of only having a few and then stopping. So even I was a little like, what happened last night, you know? And I remember swearing off that, I remember saying I will never drink and drive again after that. Like, it scared me. Like I said, I was driving one minute, the next minute I'm behind somebody's pulling me out of the car. Like, I remember bits and pieces of the night. So it kind of scared me, and I said, I'll never drink and drive again. Well, you guys all know how that goes. Within 3 or 4 months, I guess I gained my parents' trust back, and now I'm taking my mom's car out, and if I'm going to go out, I'm going to drink. And if I'm going to get home, I got to drive, right? So I just justify it, and it was like that never happened, you know, and the big book talks about that. It talks about how we forget the pain and suffering of a month or even a week ago. And that would happen to me over and over and over again. Bottom line is, what happens to me as an alcoholic is, once I put alcohol in my system, I'm no longer calling the shots. I'm no longer making my own decisions. So whatever intentions I had, whatever promises I made before that, they're out the window. I'd become a different person. I can't tell you how many times I drank and drove after that. Probably most of the times that I drank, I ended up behind the wheel. So anyway, moving along, I'll fast forward through my drinking here. My dad, I moved up to New Jersey with my dad. He was an FBI agent at the time. My mom thought he could fix me. He couldn't fix me. He found that out real quick, that what was actually going on. And my alcoholism is just progressing. It's just, I'm getting into harder and harder drugs. The drinking's becoming more frequent. And the consequences were just piling up. And I did some heavy damage to my relationship with my family in New Jersey. When I was up there, my dad had enough. He sent me back down here. And the next few years, I'm like in and out of my mom. Like my stepdad would kick me out of the house, and he would have enough. He'd kick me out, and then I'd go stay on somebody's couch for a while. Then I'd be able to, now I can drink the way I want to, and I would, just drink and drug, and eventually I'd run out of a place to stay. I would come crawling back to my mom. She would convince my stepdad to let me in, and I'd make promises. I won't do it anymore. I mean it this time. Like, I'm serious. I'm gonna change. And then within a week or two, I'm coming home drunk again. And they would get tired of that, and I have a little sister who's 15 years younger than me. So at that time, she's like 5. She's like 5, 6 years old. So they didn't want me around her. Like, I remember for a while there in my drink, she wasn't allowed in the car with me. They wouldn't let her in the car. They didn't know what I was on, and they didn't know if I had insurance. So she wouldn't, and I would get offended by that, I would get real offended by that. I'm like, I can't just take her to get ice cream? They're like, absolutely not. She's not getting in the car, And just like how delusional I was that, I would be putting her in harm's way if she got in my car. So, and I would get so resentful at my stepdad for kicking me out, and rightfully so. He was protecting his family, and he wasn't enabling me, so good for him. So it just progressed. It got worse. You guys know how that goes. So I got arrested in Ybor City in a blackout for fighting with a person, and then it turned into fighting with the cops. So got a felony doing that. I remember I woke up in jail, and I thought I needed to stop smoking weed. I remember saying, I need to stop smoking weed. That's the problem here. Weed was not involved in that night at all. It was all drinking that night. But for some reason, weed's the problem. And it was just, I did not want to give up drinking. Like, whatever I could point the blame on, or whoever I could point the blame on, I did not want the blame to be pointed on my drinking. That I did not want to lose that. That was the only thing that made me feel okay. It was the only thing that made me feel like normal and like I can get through life, So, and anyone that got in the way of my drinking, that would point out how out of control my drinking was. And I remember my aunt and uncle like trying to 12-step me, and I was like, I was not trying to hear it. Like, and if they did it enough, I would just avoid them. I would just stay away from them. I did not want to give up my drinking. So fast forward, now I'm getting to the point where I'm getting ready to get kicked out of the house again. I call my uncle. I tell him, I'm hurting pretty bad at this point. Now I'm not going to go into details, but it's drinking liquor every night to get to sleep, and then it's using another substance to get through the day that stimulates you. So I'm using that all day, and then just to be able to get to sleep, I'm drinking liquor. And so I'm hurting pretty bad at this point, and I called my uncle up. I said, hey, how did you get sober? What'd you do? And he said, you want to meet me at a meeting tonight? And I said, sure, I'll meet you at a meeting. So it was Club 33 in Tampa. It was the nightly newcomers, 8:15 meeting. And actually something happened. He ended up not making it. I don't know what happened, but I made it to the meeting. And I'm sitting in the meeting. I think I was sitting in the back corner, and I'm just listening. I didn't share. I'm just listening. And I heard this one guy share. His name was Paul, and he said he had 6 years sober. And he was just, I don't really remember exactly what he shared, but something that he said grabbed my attention. And I grabbed him after the meeting. And I remember asking him, like, how do you stay away from alcohol? Like, because I would try to do it on my own, and I would always go back to it. And I would always go back to it, no matter how bad the consequences were before. I would always end up going back to it. So that was kind of like what I was trying to get out of him. I was like, he said he had 6 years sober. I'm like, how did you stay away? How did you not trick yourself into drinking for 6 years? Like, how is that possible? And he took me to the Village Inn, and we sat down, and he explained how it happened. He walked me. He didn't take me through the steps, but he walked me through his experience with the steps, and he just explained how him going through the steps enabled him to find a higher power, and that as long as that relationship with God remained his number one priority, the most important thing in his life, that he believed he would stay sober. And that's what had kept him sober for 6 years. So I'm one of them good alcoholics that needs to be beaten down really bad in order to totally do the program here. So for the next year and a half, I'm bouncing in and out of AA. And I'm watching people get better. I'm watching like people come in and stay sober, and I'm not. I'm bouncing in and out. You know, I would get like a month, and then I would be picking up a white chip. I'd get a week. I'd be picking up a white chip. And looking back, I was doing half measures with the program for that year and a half. I just did not have enough desperation yet to totally give myself to the program. So I would do what was comfortable, and I would dismiss what was uncomfortable. You know, I would pick and choose what I was going to do, and there was no recovery there. It says in the big book, half measures avails nothing. It doesn't give me half results. It gives me nothing. Like, I end up drunk. And so that's what would happen to me, and it got worse over that year and a half. And I ended up homeless. I made it to, my last night drinking was at a crack motel off of Bush Boulevard. You know, I ended up hanging out with people that I just normally wouldn't hang out with when I'm drinking. You know, but that's what happens when I drink. So, and then I made it to a meeting shortly after that, and I remember my friend who he probably had a year sober at that time, and he actually went back out, and he passed away. He overdosed. So some of the people that helped me in early sobriety actually didn't stay sober and are no longer with us. So I'm grateful to him for that. I remember him grabbing me after the meeting, and he said, "What's your plan?" And I was like, "I don't have one." He's like, "That's great." He's like, "That's good. You want to stay on our couch until you figure it out." And I was like, "Yeah, man, that'd be great." It was either that or the backseat of my car at that point. So yeah, I stayed on their couch. My sponsor, his sponsor, so my grant sponsor, knew the director at Axe in Drew Park. So he set up a meeting with the director at Axe. And I met up with him, and I was trying to get into Axe. I was trying to get into the treatment center. So he did an interview with me, and then eventually I ended up moving into Axe. And I did not think that was like I was going to stay sober. I got so used to picking up white chips and so used to just like hopeless, you know. Like I said, I would see other people come in and get better, and I'm like, I must be different, you know. I must be different because I'm not getting better when I put the drink down. I would get worse, you know. And that makes sense now, looking back. If I don't have a sufficient replacement, if I don't have a sufficient solution, I will go back to what I know works. And unfortunately, that was alcohol. That was what fixed me temporarily and then destroyed my life. So anyway, so now I'm living in Acts, and I'm working the steps with my sponsor, and I had to get rid of that terminal uniqueness. That had to go. Like, that was, they call it terminal because it'll kill you. Like, that's like, my case is different. So if my case is different, I don't have to do what you guys do, right? Because it's not going to work because I'm different. And then I die. Like, I'd spirit. Did I just break that down pretty good? That definition? So anyway, I had to get rid of that. That had to go. And that actually did start to get chipped away at, and it started to go away going through the steps. But I had to do the steps thoroughly and honest. I had to be 100% honest, and I had to do everything that my sponsor was telling me to do. And I remember doing that. I guess I got the gift of desperation at that point, because I remember, like, something happened to me. My ego was so beaten down that I didn't have the energy or the will to argue with him or, like, question him. I was just like, I'll do it. I'll do whatever you say. I'll do it. I became convinced that if I didn't do AA the way that it's outlined in the big book, which is the way that my sponsor was having me do it, if I didn't do it that way, I was absolutely going to drink again. Like, there was whereas before it was kind of like there was always like option C, like I could do AA my way. And that option C was no longer there. I was like, I'm either going to do AA or I'm going to drink. That's it. And so I started doing AA. And I worked the steps with my sponsor. So I stayed in that treatment center for 6 months. I don't think I completed the steps while I was there, but I know I did a 4th and 5th step while I was there. And I believe I did start making my amends while I was there. So I don't have time to really talk about all the steps, but step 1 for me is huge for me. It's huge for all of us. It's the only one that we have to do 100%. It's the one that can't. It's 100%. It's binary. I'm either powerless or I'm not. There's no like kind of powerless. There's no like halfway powerless. There's no like I'm powerless today, but 30 days from now I'm not going to be powerless. There's none of that. It's either I'm powerless now and for the rest of my life. That's either true or it's not. And for me, it's true. And I had to become totally convinced of that. And reading the big book with my sponsor, I became convinced of that. My experience plus reading the big book with my sponsor, I became convinced of that. And then unmanageable, man, that's drunk or sober. That's not just drinking. Obviously my life's unmanageable when I'm drinking. Like, that's obvious. But that's sober too. When I'm trying to manage my life on my own in sobriety, it becomes unmanageable. I managed my life back to another drink so it's unmanageable, drunk or sober. And so if that's the case, I better be willing to believe in a power greater than myself, right? Like, if I'm truly convinced that I'm powerless and I can't fix this, I became open. I became willing to believe that a power greater than myself could restore me to sanity. Because obviously I wasn't going to do it. There was no other hope. So I was willing to believe in a power greater than myself. And I called him God. I called him God back then. That hasn't changed. My sponsor told me to hit my knees in the morning, hit my knees at night, ask him for help to stay sober for that 24 hours. If I was successful, hit your knees at night and thank him for another day sober. And I was doing that. And I remember like months are going by, 2-3 months sober, and I'm doing that every day. And I'm still kind of depressed. I'm still like anxious. I'm going to meetings every day. I'm calling people. I'm picking up service commitments. I remember doing a jail meeting. I had 5 days sober, and I'm chairing a jail meeting. And I remember all the guys are starting to pour in from their pods, like one pod at a time. So like 3 guys would come in, and then 4 guys would come in. And as they're coming in, I'm chatting with them, and I remember one of the guys was like, "How long you got sober?" And I'm like, 5 days. And he goes, "Keep coming back." I'm like, "Yeah, man, this guy in orange has more time than me, but whatever." So, like, I'm doing stuff like that right from the beginning. Like, that was my sponsor, that was my sponsorship family. They were heavily involved in stuff like that. So I was just following them around, doing stuff like that. But like I said, 2-3 months in, I'm like, I still feel depressed. I don't feel the way I want to feel, which is foreign to me, because when I didn't feel the way I wanted to feel out there, I would have changed the way I felt. And now I'm like, I kind of got to like feel it, I don't like that. So I remember talking to my sponsor. I was like, man, I'm praying every morning. I'm praying every night. I'm like, man, I still don't, I feel depressed. I don't feel like it's working. And he goes, well, when was the last time you had 3 months sober? And I was like, never, like before I started drinking. And he's like, do you still think it's not working? And I was like, yeah, I guess it's working. God answers my prayers the way he sees fit, not the way I see fit, right? So like I thought he should be changing the way I feel, right? He should be making me feel comfortable in my own skin at 3 months sober, and that's not reality. But what he was doing, he was keeping me sober, and he was teaching me how to live life sober, right? To not run from those scary emotions that I ran from for years. He was teaching me how to do that. So, and then I did a 4th and 5th step with my sponsor. The third step, I made a decision to turn my life and my will over to care of God. And the best way, I think, to do that is to start the 4th step. Like I remember my sponsor used to say, he would ask me a question. He was like, how do you know if somebody did their 3rd step? Have they started their 4th step? And so it was, and it says it right in the big book. It was a big decision, but if I didn't follow it up with that inventory, it wasn't going to do anything for me. So I had to immediately start writing my 4th step, and I did. I remember sitting in the cafeteria in the treatment center every night before I went to bed. I would write for like 30 minutes, and because I procrastinate, so I just knew that if I didn't just do it every night, that I was scared of what might happen if I did that. So I'm just going to sit down and write. So I wrote, and I finished it pretty quick. And we did my 5th step shortly after that, and I shared everything with him. I shared everything, and everything I had written down, from the format of the big book, I shared all that, and then I shared some stuff there's some secrets, some stuff that I thought I was going to take to the grave. And man, he didn't judge me. Some of that stuff he did himself. I was like blown away by that. I was like, you did that too? And also, I remember like a couple weeks after I did my 5th step, I remember being in a meeting and hearing a woman in the meeting share about doing one of those things. I don't even remember what the thing was, but I remember hearing her talk about it openly in a meeting. And I was like, man, that thing was going to get me drunk. And this lady's just talking about it in front of everybody. I was like, I'm not there yet. Not there yet, but I told my sponsor. So, I would see stuff like that. I would see people in meetings just be so honest, so vulnerable, and that would give me courage to do it too, And so, moving on, I did 6 and 7 after we did my 5th step. And that terminal, I believe that's where that terminal uniqueness really started to get smashed. After I did that 4th and 5th step, I found out that I wasn't the only one that did these things. I wasn't so special, wasn't unique. I literally, I remember it hitting me at some point after that 5th step. I remember it hitting me that I was the same as all you guys. Like literally, like I had always compared myself to people. I'll walk in a room, I'm either better than or I'm less than. I was constantly sizing myself up to people. And I remember like I wasn't doing that anymore. And I was like, oh my man, I'm the same as all you guys. I'm not better or less than. And I remember we were at the hang after my home group, and I was like so excited that I came to this revelation. I was like, I couldn't believe it. I remember grabbing him, and I'm like, dude, I'm the same as you guys. And I explained what I was talking about. I'm like, dude, you know how I've always felt different and felt, either less than or better than. I was like, I don't feel that anymore. And he knew exactly what I was talking about. I could tell by his reaction, he knew exactly what was going on. And he was like, man, you feel free? And I was like, yeah, man, it feels good. So like stuff like that would happen in my first year. Just little spiritual experiences, little things like that would give me like a little bit of hope. That was like, man, maybe I'm going to make it. Maybe sobriety will work for me too, and maybe sobriety's not so miserable. I actually could maybe experience some peace and some joy and be sober. Because that was a foreign concept for me. Like prior to all these experiences I started having in early sobriety with the steps, sobriety equaled misery. Sobriety was like, man, when is this going to be over? And eventually it was over because it was unbearable. But now I'm like actually experiencing peace, and that would pass, it would pass. I'd go back to anxious and fearful and resentful, and thank God for the steps for all that stuff, because that stuff will drive me nuts without a solution. So I got to speed this up here. So going through the amends, my sponsor had me go visit my family. He would tell me, look for things you could do around there. Just look for things you could. He's like, you've been a taker your whole life, so look for things you can do for your mom. And I'd go up there. She would cook dinner, and I'd be like, Mom, can I do the dishes? And she'd be like, no, don't worry about it. You just enjoy your visit. And I'm like, no, I really want to do the dishes. And I would do the dishes, and I would do yard work for her. I would trim the hedges, and at first she was like, you don't have to do that. She wasn't used to it, She was just happy that I was there and I was sober. And eventually, I'd go up there to visit, and she would have, the hedge clippers ready on the driveway for me. She'd be like, yeah, all the hedges need to be brought down a foot, and the palm trees need to be trimmed. And I'm like, oh, taking advantage of AA, huh? Are we? But I say that jokingly. She really, looking back, she was seeing what that was doing, not only for my sobriety, but what it was doing for our relationship. And it was actually healing the relationship, because there were so many times when I would come home and make promises and not keep those promises. And so obviously that wasn't an option anymore. I had to show them that I was changing through my actions. And so they saw the change. They right in front of them, they saw that, hey, he's not just coming up here getting a meal and then taking off. He's actually he's trying to be helpful here. And so that helped heal the relationship, and eventually they trust me enough for my sister to be in the car. I remember I don't know how long I had sober, maybe around a year or maybe a little less than a year. They let me take her to Chuck E. Cheese. And I was I'm pretty sure I remember driving to Chuck E. Cheese with her in the back seat tearing up. I'm pretty sure I remember crying a little bit. And so that's the steps. That's God, And then 10, 11, and 12, inventories. Like I said, I took an inventory 2 days ago, and I was talking to a friend about it yesterday. And I realized that I owed my brother an amends. And he just happened to be visiting this week. He was from New Jersey. He was staying with my other brother. And this is something that, like, my perception changed on it. I didn't think I did anything wrong for a few years. And because of the circumstances, I don't have time to go into detail with all of it. But on this inventory and talking to my friend, I realized I owed him a direct amends. I realized I was wrong about something. And this morning, I made that amends to him. He was leaving for the airport at 11. I got off for work this morning, and I went over to my brother's house, and I talked to him, and I made amends to him. And he didn't want me to. He was like, "No, you don't have to. We don't have to. I'm good. Like, we're good. We're past this." And I just explained to him that I was wrong. I was wrong what I did. I thought I was right, but I was wrong. I want to, if there's anything I could do to make it right, and I want us to have a good, healthy relationship, and I think it seemed like he forgave me based on his reaction, and he is a Christian, but he's not in recovery. So I don't know if he's been praying about it or what, but it seemed like he genuinely forgave me, and I was so happy. It could have went either way, but I was so happy that was his response to my amends. Okay, but that was the result of an inventory, right? Like, if I didn't sit down, and he actually wasn't even on the inventory. It was other things on the inventory that led to the conversation about him that made me realize I owe him an amends. So, like, that's the power of inventory right there is I get to look at things that I wouldn't normally look at, that I would just ignore, and then before I know it, I'm resentful at this person for a long time, or I'm letting fear dictate my actions, or I'm living selfishly and I don't even know it. So, yeah, and then my dad, I just want to share real quick about him, and I don't have much time here, so I'll just share about him and then I'll be done. My dad passed away almost 2 years ago. He had liver cancer, and leading up to him passing away, he passed in May of 2024. And leading up to that, we were going to go on a turkey hunt together in April. We did it every year. We'd go to North Carolina, go turkey hunting. That was our trip. I would fly up to Jersey. We would drive down together. And he was, like, in really bad shape at this point. Like, he wasn't, I wasn't sure if he was going to be able to make it. But he said he prayed about it. He asked God to give him enough strength and to be well enough to just be able to hunt those 3 days. And that's what happened. He was throwing up the day before we went. We hit the road. He didn't throw up once the whole time down there. He hunted the whole 3 days, didn't throw up. We got back. He started throwing up again as soon as we got back. So it looked like God answered that prayer. But the reason I bring that up is because the drive down and the drive up, we got to talk about some things that never talked about. He actually made amends to me for leaving us when I was a kid, and I forgave him in early sobriety for that. So it wasn't that I needed, but it did. I believe it brought some level of healing and closure to our relationship, and he needed to do that for him and to be right with God. He needed to do that. So, and we talked about some things, some hard conversations, and I'm grateful for that trip. That was 3 weeks before he passed away. It was so awesome that we got to get that trip in before he passed away, and then I flew right back up a few weeks later, and we put his memorial service together and all that, and I got to be there for my family and mourn his death, and I feel like I did that the right way. I talked about it a lot. And Chris was there the whole time through that. I remember talking to Chris a lot while I was going through that, and I'm just grateful. I'm an example that AA works, good, bad, or indifferent. I'm an example that AA works, and I just hope that something I said helped somebody out there tonight. But don't, if you're new, don't just take my story. Like there's plenty of other stories that might hit you harder, or that you might connect with. So keep coming back. Thank you.